this is the best cross-country race in the world. And that statement I just made might be a little bit biased because I am from the UK, but it's certainly up there in terms of one of the best cross-country races in the world. And a little bit of an explanation about the event. It was a relay on, in my case, the senior men's race was 4 times 5k. So you had 4 different runners taking it in turns running a 2-lap course around a 2.5k loop. And this course specifically has kind of everything you need or want or expect in a cross-country race. This year it was quite nice weather, so it was pretty dry, but there's still a few little spots of mud. There was plenty of hills, and half of the run is kind of in this forest where you're basically weaving in and out of tree roots and trees and going up and down. So it's a really challenging course regardless of if it's muddy or dry. So it's just really good fun, and also the atmosphere of the relay event, it being the national relays. You've got everyone from around the country, you've got every single age group, so you've basically got thousands of people in the middle of a field either competing or watching people compete. And for me, it's just one of the most fun events of the year where you get loads of different calibre of athletes. And also it's at a point of the season where people are in different parts of their training. Some people might have had an early break after track season, whereas others might have extended it into the road season. So there's different fitness levels and people targeting different things. So a lot of people racing this weekend will be targeting the European cross-country trials in a few weeks' time. Other people might be doing road races or going indoor for more track races. So it really is a great mixture of people, and we'll get into that in this video. And this year, I don't know why, but it did seem more stacked than usual. And by that I mean there seem to be much better runners. So for context, in 2021, I came back second and I ran 15:17. It was a slightly different course. If anything, that course was shorter than it was this year because it's changed a slight bit. But I came back second, and I'll give you a reason why that 15:17 means something later on in this video when I talk about my race and where I came and what time I ran. So I think there's certain different races where the warm-up has to be slightly different, and that's because you've got to consider things like a call-up, how fast you're setting off, and what kind of race it is. By call-up I mean some races you might have to be in a pen or like a call-up room 20 minutes before. Others you might be able to get on the start line a minute or 2 before, and others like it was yesterday, you're probably waiting around for about 5 minutes before your race in a pen to make sure you can get a good start. And then the start will be definitely faster than the rest of the race. Whereas usually in a track race, it's probably paced quite well at the start. Cross-country races always tend to go out basically near a sprint for the first few hundred metres and then settle down. And usually actually probably slow consistently throughout the rest of the race, which is just the case of cross-country. It's usually survival of the fittest, where whoever's the strongest or the fittest on the day, whoever just lasts longer basically wins the race. That's just the way it is. It's a bit different with this one because it's a relay, so sometimes maybe people don't take as many risks to try and just make sure that their team can get through the race well, especially on the first leg. So it's a bit different where people just kick it down towards the end of my race, which I'll get onto now. So my race, the first K, I did want to get out hard, and for me this race was just about matching whatever moves are made and just trying to be as close to the front as possible. So I kind of went out in the lead over the first 200, 300 metres, and then someone else moved to the front, and I was just like, right, I'll just follow him. And probably quite soon into the race, I realised like maybe we're running a bit too fast here. It didn't feel too fast at the time because you kind of feel easy, but I noticed that he was starting to sprint up, or like seemed to be sprinting basically up hills, and we were getting a bit of a gap on the rest of the field, which were really good calibre runners. So I was a bit cautious of that. So around a K in, I started to ease off a tiny bit to drop back, almost to let the rest of the field catch me, but also to make sure I wasn't actually putting too much effort in early on in the race, and kind of keep my heart rate a bit lower, keep the effort a bit lower so then I can progress through. So I was kind of in second, sitting behind first, but then I dropped back to let the group behind catch me, and that's where I sat in for the rest of the race. So going through probably around 2k is when that group caught me, and then around 3k is when we started to catch the runner in the front. And then from there we did spend a bit of time messing around, I would say, in the trees, or almost no one was really making a move. We were still running decently fast, but everyone was just waiting for someone to do something, and that's when Angus McMillan from York decided that he wanted to go. It was probably around the, I'm trying to, obviously cross-country races don't really have exact splits or markers where the K markers are. Probably around 1200 metres to go that Angus put in this surge. And at that point I was just like, again, I just want to match whatever anyone else does. Probably a bit too abruptly, I kind of followed that straight away. And me and Angus did get a gap on the rest of the field. And then about a K to go, you start climbing up for around 600 metres, 700 metres before the finish. And during that, I started to get dropped a little bit. And my post-race analysis of this was I just didn't want it enough. And it's always been the case, I lose a lot of races from 800 metres to 400 metres to go because I don't commit like I should when everyone else does. I don't know if it's a mental barrier, if it's just the way my training's set up. I just don't seem to be able to commit that 400 metres as well as everyone else. I should be hurting myself more, and that's something I need to work on in my training. And then looking for the next race, I need to just not even think about it and just make sure I'm running as hard as I can, because I just worry about the final 400 and I kind of sulk about not wanting to be in pain for so long, which is a terrible attitude for a runner. So I just waited, and during that time I got dropped by Angus in first, and then 3 other runners overtook me, chasing Angus down over the last 500 metres. And then probably about 400 metres to go is when I started to match or maybe run a bit quicker than the front guys, because ultimately they'd done a lot of work in that prior bit of the race, whereas I didn't. So I was a little bit fresher probably than they were. But I did end up coming back 5th on my leg and running 14:51. So 26 seconds faster than I did a few years ago. It was very similar conditions in terms of mud. It was pretty much dry. Especially for a UK cross-country race, it was very nice conditions. So it was considerably quicker. And that's when I'm talking about how much more stacked it is. Even though it was a slightly different course, the first leg usually is a bit shorter because you start further down, whereas this was 2 full loops. It was 5k, whereas before I don't think it was. So I was 26 seconds quicker, but rather than coming back 2nd, I came back 5th. And so it was a lot more competitive race, and that kind of shows, I think, where the distance scene is getting in the UK at the minute, where I think we were kind of a bit behind other countries, especially European countries, in terms of 5k and 10k distance. We still are, but we're starting to really, everyone's kind of bringing up the level and having to compete against each other. So that's promising for us. We're competing against the same people, but you can't really compare yourself to them from the year before because everyone's just getting better. So it's a really strange place to be in terms of knowing that you've got better, but then you're not positioning better because everyone else has got better as well. I came back 5th, and my team from there managed to hold a similar position, and we did end up coming 8th overall in the country. And overall, I believe it was Shaftesbury Barnet who won, Bedford 2nd, and then Cambridge and Coleridge 3rd. The fastest leg of the day was ran by Rory Leonard from the Hoka, the new Hoka team. I think it's Team Makou. It's one of Britain's only professional groups. And he ran 14:30, so 21 seconds or 20 seconds faster than I did. He did that on leg 4, trying to chase down a medal, which he just missed out on. He ended up coming 4th, probably only 5 seconds-ish behind a medal, which actually, funnily enough, was his teammate Callum Elson, of the Distance Project, who has essentially, I think, only started running in August after not running since February or March time. So he's had a long time off, and he's come back and ran a pretty solid race, basically, to keep his team in 3rd and end up getting a medal. So that's great from him, and also a teammate of Rory. And then the other fastest legs of the day was by James Kingston from Tunbridge, who also ran a leg 4, I believe. And then some other Team Makou members, Ellis Cross and Scott Beattie, both ran 14:47. So I was the 9th fastest on the day. And I would say, the Team Makou setup at the minute, even though it is they do seem to be getting a lot of success. They have just been away on altitude training camp in Font-Romeu, but it's great to see, even though I'm getting beat by them, so it's not nice to see from my point of view. It's great to see an actual group in Britain having success, because we don't really have many. I mean, there's the Team New Balance Manchester group, which none of them raced yesterday, and then there's also the M11 Track Club, which is a bit more of a middle distance type of group with the likes of Keith Hodgkinson and Georgia Bellin. So at the minute, the Hoka group is the only one that's kind of thriving in the distance world, I guess. So it is great to see that a new group has come along, and then basically every athlete who's joined has improved quite drastically over these last few months or year. And that's kind of what you want when you go pro. The women's side of things, Belgrave Harriers absolutely dominated the field. They won last year. They won again, I think, by over a minute. And again, one of their leg runners was Sarah Astin, who's part of the Hoka group as well. So great things for distance running in the UK. And just, if you're a Hoka athlete, basically, it's great things for that as well. So Andy Hobdell, the coach, has done a great job with all their athletes there. Next up, as mentioned, is the European cross-country trials at Liverpool in 3 weeks' time, or whenever you're watching this, it's the 23rd of November. So that is the main goal for pretty much everyone who did this race. And also, if you do want a recap of this race and everything else that's been happening in the running scene recently, we do have a newsletter which is out on Wednesday this week, which you can sign up for in the link in the description.